The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, America. Good morning, world. Good morning, CHD. Welcome once again. My name is Michael Kane. I am the Director of Advocacy at Children's Health Defense. And today we have some really critical news for you. Children's Health Defense is backing a lawsuit against Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in his official capacity as the Secretary of HHS. And I have Ray Flores, a brilliant medical freedom attorney, on the show today to discuss this important citizens action. Some people have been calling it a citizens petition. It is not. Ray's going to talk about what the difference is between a petition and action. And what this lawsuit is about the task force that the Secretary of HHS is required to create to investigate vaccine safety. And Secretary Kennedy has not, as of yet, created that task force. So we're going to go into all the details with Ray Flores on this very critical lawsuit, just critical issue overall, one that we know from Robert Kennedy's past statements, he firmly and completely supports the creation of this task force. So why hasn't it been created? What's stalling it? What's going on behind the scenes in the monster bureaucracy of Washington, D.C.? Well, Ray and I are going to try to break that down as best we can. But first, as always, we have the news, but before the news, after I interview Ray, we have a video edit from Voices of the Vaccine Injured, the historic Senate committee that happened last week where Polly Tommy and Brian Hooker gave just amazing testimony before Ron Johnson and Senator Blumenthal and others in the Senate. We have some reactions from people that were there, including Mary Holland, Polly Tommy, Rita Pundits, so you don't want to miss that as well, too. Today, say no to the chemical liability shield. There is a meeting this morning where Congress is meeting to pass an appropriations bill that will give liability shields to the chemical industry. This is urgent. It's at 10:30. Let's flash the phone numbers up. Everyone, take a screenshot of this. Pause it. Do what you can. Get these phone numbers. If you see your rep, call them now. If you see your state, call the reps from your state now. We're going to go to the other phone numbers here. Here's the rest of them. Give a call to these people. They are on the Appropriations Committee, and you want to tell them to vote no to the chemical liability shield, and you want to tell them to support the amendment from Shelley Pingree. Shelley Pingree has an amendment to strike Section 453. Support the amendment that is coming up today at 10:30 by Shelley Pingree. We are going to be live streaming that Appropriations Committee hearing here at CHD as well, too. The Maha, thank you for putting that up. There's the live stream that's going to be starting at 10:30. If you don't see it because you're busy watching me and Ray, it'll be there when it's done. You can get there after that. Shout out to the Maha Institute. Maha Institute urges lawmakers to protect Americans against harmful chemical exposures. The Maha Institute, a very, very critical voice in the national Maha movement, and they are fully supporting basically no liability shields for the chemical industry, and we greatly appreciate that. Merrill Nass came out with a very interesting strategy yesterday for all those in Texas. If you live in Texas, great idea from the brilliant Merrill Nass. You can help America stop the chemical liability shields. There's actually two of them. And what you could do is call Representative Helen Kerwin in Texas, because Helen Kerwin is Secretary Brooke Rollins' mother. And she's a member of the Texas legislature. And she is in opposition to one of these chemical liability shields that is happening in Texas now. That's a little nifty thing. You know, you could be Secretary of USDA, but you get a phone call from Mama, you know, maybe that goes, maybe that has some weight in it. So everybody take a look at that as well too, especially those who are from Texas. A couple of tweets that are really important here. Charlie Kirk has just put out a tweet. We need to make sure parents have access to religious exemptions for vaccines for their children in all 50 states. If you're having trouble in your state, leave a comment below. Over 3 million views of that. Candace Owens puts out a similar tweet. I'll read a small portion. I get so many emails from parents saying that their state is trying to remove religious exemptions for vaccines. This is good news because it means parents have finally revolted against the dangerous vaccine schedule. But of course, those parents are then told they will not be able to enroll their children into failing public school systems. And states like Connecticut are trying to restrict homeschooling. Let's pull that down. Those two tweets came within a few days of each other. And right as some real good friends of mine are lobbying Capitol Hill about the 4 states denied religious exemptions: New York, California, Connecticut, and Maine. John Gilmore, Rita Palma, Kate Corrigan, as well as members of CHD have been having intense conversations about this stuff with people in Washington, D.C. And those conversations are resonating. So shout out to all the New York activists, to the members of CHD that are making sure that this issue is taken seriously. Our voices are being heard. Recently, a lawsuit that I'm the lead plaintiff in, just yesterday, filed a cert petition with the Supreme Court of the United States. I'm calling it Kane versus Adams. I don't really think there's Mayor of New York City, Eric Adams. There's myself. It really isn't Kane versus Adams. Eric Adams is still blocking unvaccinated workers from returning to our jobs. The first federal case filed on behalf of New York City workers denied religious exemptions to vaccination came from teachers and educators in a case called Kane versus de Blasio back in 2021. The case is also referred to as Kane versus City of New York, but it is effectively Kane versus Adams because Mayor Eric Adams is the first respondent on that. So what this is a cert petition to SCOTUS asking SCOTUS to hear this case because the lower courts have dismissed it. If the Supreme Court wants to hear this, we have a path forward with this case. If not, this case will be dismissed with prejudice, and there are other lawsuits for fired workers that continue to go through. 4 years into this battle, here we are. Filing cert with the Supreme Court is a very rare thing that gets accepted, but all prayers to the most high powers that the justices of the Supreme Court do take this case on, that they have the wisdom to know that it's absolutely critical. The religious liberties of New Yorkers were stomped on horrifically. I do hope that the Supreme Court is ready to take this on. This is very interesting. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has recently just fired 2 top staffers in leadership shakeup. The Hill reports Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has fired 2 of the department's top aides in a leadership shakeup, a spokesperson confirmed Wednesday. Heather Flick Melanson, Kennedy's chief of staff, and Hannah Anderson, deputy chief of staff of policy, have both been ousted. No reason was given for the change. Now, Heather Flick Melanson, I remember that was a Trump pick that Trump and others in Trump world wanted her to be there. Well, Robert Malone came out with a Substack saying that when the Moderna vax was approved for children 6 months through 11, Bobby Kennedy was out of the country and didn't know. Now, let's look at Robert Malone's Substack. Let's zoom in on that red line part. There is now a new HHS chief of staff. The DCOS for policy was walked off the premises and was so upset that she crashed her car into the secretary's government-provided vehicle. So this is some shocking news. Now, some people have said, well, it must be that this chief of staff and deputy didn't tell Bobby about this, and then Bobby fired them. We don't know if that's true. I can't even tell you if this car crash is true, but that'd be one heck of a thing for Robert Malone to make up. I don't think that that was made up. What I do want to say is that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is part of one of the most important families, political families in the nation. And I'm sure he's had many dinner conversations with, whether it was his uncle or father at the time, about how high level um, about how high level government officials can get rolled, how they can be made to be just figureheads. And for Kennedy to have this shakeup, to me, it's a sign that Bobby Kennedy doesn't want to just be a figurehead or just have things done behind his back. Now, I don't know if that's the case. I'm not speaking on behalf of Children's Health Defense or anyone, just trying to read these tea leaves here. So Bobby needs our support, man, for sure. It's not an easy thing that he's doing that. But sometimes he also needs pushback. In the Defender, they broke this yesterday evening. We have lawsuit that targets RFK Jr. for failing to set up task force on childhood vaccine safety. And the lead attorney on this is Ray Flores. Let's bring Ray into the conversation. Ray, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great, Michael. Thank you very much. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. So this is a critical issue. You have filed a citizens action. Talk to us a little bit about the evolution of this and where the case is currently at.
Well, sure. I mean, I am a natural foods industry veteran since the 80s, and I saw our industry go down the tubes, in a very similar situation where it just got taken over and co-opted. And I could just see it from the beginning that the narrative was going to shift. This is not my Maha that we're looking at. It is all about, ice cream and junk food. And there is no mandate for healthy junk food, but there is a mandate for healthy childhood vaccines. And Mr. Kennedy knows quite well that he has an obligation to improve the quality of vaccines for children and to establish a task force. And so I figured that the best way to go about it would be to, write him a demand letter, wait 60 days, which is what is required under a citizen's action. And then if it's not responded to, or if the task force is not formed, then I have the ability to bring suit. And so I did it on my own behalf. I am the plaintiff. I am not representing myself as an attorney. I am just a citizen bringing this action against him, which is your right to do under the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act.
So you brought up the 1986 Act. I do believe that the creation of the task force is required for the secretary to do under this federal act. Is that correct?
Absolutely. He has to make sure that he promotes the development of childhood vaccines so that they're safer with fewer and less serious adverse reaction, and that he has to make or assure improvements in vaccines and research in order to reduce the risk of adverse reactions.
So
And so,
what we have here, Lou had just put up on the screen, was a memo from 1990, which was the last time that an HHS department requested that a task force actually be created. Was a task force created at that time in 1990, and what happened with it?
yeah, they never filed the biennial report to Congress showing what improvements had been made. And so it was just an empty task force. They must have thrown their hands up in the air when they said there's no way we're going to tackle this. Basically, this is a task force that the secretary, all he has to do is have the memo signed, and it was this memo you just flashed was issued by the deputy secretary. So Mr. Kennedy has a deputy secretary, Jim O'Neill. All he has to do is copy it. Mr. Kennedy has a copy of this memo. All he has to do is cut and paste what the words are, and then after that, then Jay Bhattacharya would lead the task force along with the commissioner of the FDA and the acting commissioner, head of the CDC. And so it's really a no-brainer. It's not like he has to start hiring people and going through a whole process. All he has to do is sign a memo. It's the biggest no-brainer of all time. And so my whole point is, why is he not dealing with vaccines? This is not the Bobby we know. Is he being held captive in the swamp And it kind of feels that way sometimes, doesn't it?
So, to talk about the task force and what needs to be created. In 1986, this act becomes law, requiring a biennial report to be produced and presented to Congress. So that means, I would think, in 1988, there should have been the first report created and presented to Congress. Was that report created? Was any biennial report ever created?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's exactly in 1986 or 87. I think it's closer to 1989. But no, the report was never created, and Mr. Kennedy sued on behalf of ICANN uh, to find in a FOIA request to find the copies and the evidence of the documents. And HHS said we never found these documents. We can't locate any of these documents, which basically means that they don't exist. Now, instead of filing a citizen's action, which is what they should have done, they just dismissed the case, saying, okay, we kicked their ass, which is what, everybody was saying. And they really didn't. They just kind of dragged away with their tail between their legs. And so, the whole point here is that, we need to make sure that we hold him to his obligation. This is something that Congress created. It's not something that the Maha Commission can get in the middle of, or that the Secretary of Department of Veterans Affairs can get in the middle of, with the Maha Commission and all this bureaucratic red tape that has nothing to do with Maha. And he can just sign a memo and then put it into motion. And then in 2 years, then we should expect a report of what it is that they've done. Now, he could very easily also write a report saying, we've done nothing. We never established a task force. He could do that as well. So this case really has a lot of little elements in there that need to be satisfied. I think it's a well thought out case. It may appear as though we're being unfriendly to Mr. Kennedy. On the contrary, we're helping him to have an excuse to do his job. And why does he need to do his job? And this is children's health defense. Those three words say it all. We don't need to be apologetic for standing up to the rights of children, to the health of children. And all those tears, yeah, absolutely, right? And all those tears at the voices of the vaccine injured, there would have been a lot fewer tears if they would have done their job from the beginning and formed this task force to make vaccines safer.
In the Defender article that wrote up this lawsuit, Mary Holland was quoted as saying that this is black letter law, right? This is statutory. This is a federal statute that has been passed. And that 1986 Act has a lot of things in it we don't like, but there are also some things in there that are important that need to be held to. There isn't really wiggle room here. There isn't really any reason you could say, well, we don't have to do that. No, you do have to do it. It is federal statute. It is set up. Now, you talked about the importance of a citizen action. I've heard people call your lawsuit a citizen petition, but I think there's a difference between the two. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, like we put together on the bait and switch case when they had the FDA approve a non-existent community vaccine. We filed a petition, and that if they don't respond to it within, I don't remember, it was 180 days or whatever, then that gives you standing then to bring a lawsuit. At least you gave them notice. And that's just kind of it's probably ignored oftentimes by the powers that be. But a citizen action has real teeth in it. There's attorney fees, other lawyers out there, if you're listening in TV land, you can do one too, So why not, take the easier route to get them, if certain prerequisites are met, to get them to do their job.
So what are you hoping, Ray, will be the next steps of this? And what has happened so far? Has there been any response from HHS or anybody reporting to Secretary Kennedy?
Well, the deputy HHS secretary's attorney, he contacted me and he said, his name is Robert Foster, and he said, Mr. Kennedy asked me to call you. You filed a citizen petition. It was kind of sounded like it was kind of like good luck. Bobby asked me to call you. I go, no, it's not a petition. It's a citizen action. And actually, I'm in the courthouse right now filing it. And so then within a couple hours, I emailed him the complaint. I haven't heard a word. They haven't appeared in the case yet. They were officially served on the 2nd of June. So that means at the earliest, we should expect something at the beginning of August of some kind of response at all. Now, even if the response is that they formed a task force, what about the 2-year report that they have to do? So I'm going to make sure that I don't just dismiss the case. I'm going to make sure that the court retains jurisdiction, that if they don't file that report, or if some other attorney wants to bring a suit as well, then in 2 years, then we'll just keep their feet to the fire, which is really what has to happen. I mean, how is it that almost 4 decades have passed, and they've never done their end of the bargain? Mr. Kennedy's in breach of contract, in breach of what needs to be done as well. And there's the 2-year report that needs to be filed, and that is codified.
So we have heard a lot of talk in the media from Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who heads the NIH right now, from Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. himself, that they intend to look at the entire childhood schedule. They have made these statements. So it makes a lot of people think, well, hey, if they've already said that, why are you doing this, Ray? They've already publicly stated they're going to look at the childhood schedule. What would you say about those public comments as they relate to what you are looking for here?
Yeah, they can't supplant the duty, the mandate, the congressional mandate to form the task force. They can talk about all this other stuff all they want. They can do anything to keep people happy. But this is a dog and pony show, in my opinion. What they really need to do is form this task force. If they want to do other things as well, let them do it. Great. But as it stands right now, they need to form this task force, and they need to file the biennial reports.
So you would say that if they came up with some other version of analyzing the childhood schedule, of looking at vaccines, it doesn't matter, because they must actually follow the letter of the law, creating the task force in the manner that is laid out by federal statute. Is that basically your position?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's been kumbaya time with the healthy food dyes, going into the ice cream and everything, saying, oh my God, we're winning. But I think that this 6 months, in order, with this Maha Commission, this was just meant to derail our movement and to place people in there who are going to shift the expectations of a very energetic movement. When you think about that movement, what it was like back about 6 months ago, 7 months ago, I mean, the country was on fire, or at least our movement was on fire. Now it's been deflated completely. There's backbiting, there's name calling, there's, sell out. All these other words are being thrown around, and that's not true. It's just his hands are tied. And so let's have a court encourage him to do his job.
I think you're correct in that Secretary Kennedy's hands are tied. I think we're seeing multiple signs of that. I think we're seeing that he's able to do and to change and to push forth as much as he's able to do. But even as he said in his Senate confirmation hearing, he serves at the pleasure of President Trump. And then he has to deal with the entirety of the system that's been set up by Trump around him, and who's in charge of the appointments, and how all of these different situations go. It's not simply, but I've heard a lot of people say, like, Bobby can end the COVID emergency with a strike of his pen. Bobby can, get rid of the COVID shots with a strike of his pen. Maybe he could. He could also be fired the very next day and no longer have a job. There's no union for the HHS secretary. There's no, you don't get like job security. You serve at the pleasure of the president. So I think that's where it's important that outside forces like Children's Health Defense, like yourself and others, are putting the pressure on to make sure that as much as possible of a true MAHA agenda actually gets implemented, actually has the legs and ability to run into the finish line and be successful. Because just throwing our hands back and hey, Bobby's got this, that definitely no movement has ever worked like that. Your comments, your thoughts on that, Ray?
Well, yeah, I mean, we have to act. I mean, I filed this, or at least I sent the warning letter on my own. I hadn't asked CHD for support. I was going to support this myself, and then CHD came on later and decided to support me in my suit against him. And you can see politically that there is a couple of hurdles that have to be done. But what are we going to do? Be neutered? I mean, did they bring him on to shut CHD up? Did they bring Kennedy in to shut all of us in our movement up? It feels like that sometimes, and that's why we have to go back to basics, and that's why we have to keep him on task. And it's called a brotherly shove. We're helping him to do his thing.
A brotherly shove. I got two little boys in the house. I see a lot of brotherly shoves, and I know exactly what you're talking about. And I agree. The midterm elections aren't that far away, and right now we're seeing, actually in just a few minutes, there's an appropriation committee hearing where a Republican appropriation bill is supporting a liability shield for big pesticide, right? And some Democrats are stepping up now in opposition to that as well, too. And a lot of people in the MAHA movement are saying, is that MAHA? Is it MAHA to protect big chemical? So I think MAHA decided the last election, in my view, from what I saw. And these politicians need to realize that. They need to be aware and wake up, all of them. That's not even just Bobby Kennedy specific. It's all of them, that MAHA is a movement with an agenda, not a personality popularity test. That's not what it is. And I hope that your lawsuit, which CHD does, and so many great activists, I know there's people in DC right now that the chemical liability shield is a big deal for them and they're fighting against them. Everybody needs to be listening to these voices, because you don't want MAHA to shift their votes or stay home. Because that's what happens, is that if you don't speak to the constituents' issue, they simply don't show up to the voting booth. And there you go. Yeah. Ray, we're almost out of time here on the segment. Any final comments or anything you think people should do now or could do to assist in your lawsuit or in all these issues that we've been discussing?
Well, in the article that was published in the Defender yesterday, and there's also a second article about a citizen's action to put the COVID-19 shots on the childhood schedule that was brought by Alton Maglio. Please read my complaint that's linked in the article and get to know exactly what it is that we're doing here before people start making snap judgments about why any of us are turning on Bobby, because we're not. We're really working to save our movement, to protect children, most of all, above all, fiercely, defiantly. Mm-hmm.
Ray Flores, you're a phenomenal medical freedom attorney. You're a good friend of mine. Thank you so much for coming on. I ask you, please reserve time in your schedule to come back here when there's updates on this, because this is very, very important.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you so much, Ray. Hey, Lou, let's show the complaint. I don't think we did. Let's show the first page of the actual complaint that Ray has filed. There's the first page of the actual certified complaint back on May 27th, filed by Ray Flores. We are going to be having updates on this. Oh, and one other thing I think I forgot to plug at the beginning, so important, moment of truth. CHD is having our national conference November 7th through 9th in Austin, Texas. We're going to be having some amazing speakers like Andy Wakefield, Dr. Pierre Corey, one of my favorites of all time, Dr. Peter McCullough, Mary Holland, Dr. Brian Hooker, and many, many, many more that are still being worked out. please click on the link in the show notes here. Check out the conference, register to come to the conference, make your travel plans. You don't want to miss this. The entire medical freedom movement, MAHA movement, is going to be there for sure. Don't go anywhere because right now what we're going to show is I had the privilege of being in DC for Voices of the Vaccine Injured. Just a remarkable hearing that Polly Tommy and Brian Hooker were able to give testimony to. After the hearing, I was able to talk to a lot of people, including Polly and Mary, but also Rita Palma, Kate Corrigan, and other people who just lived in the DC area that were there to see history. You know, shout out to the woman who came up to me and said, Michael, I saw you on CHD TV this morning, and you said you were going to DC for the hearing, and if you could do it from New York, I lived around the corner, so I came. So I wasn't able to talk to her because it was just too quick, but shout out to you and thank you for introducing yourself to me. Let's show that footage from after Voices of the Vaccine Injured.
So, Michael, what were your thoughts about what you just saw in there?
I'm a little bit in shock. I'm a little bit in a daze. I really, the theme we're hearing as people coming out is, wow, how did Democratic Senator Blumenthal start agreeing with Ron Johnson, start agreeing with Dr. Brian Hooker of Children's Health Defense? But he did, he actually did make some statements about how liability shield for Big Pharma didn't make sense to him. He was a lawyer. He repeated that a lot of times, and how they should be accountable just like any other industry is. It's interesting to note today at 10 a.m. there was a vote on the appropriations bill to give a liability shield to Big Chemical, to pesticides companies, and it appears the Republicans are supporting that, the Democrats aren't. I wonder if that was on Senator Blumenthal's mind today. I really think just hearing these stories from Polly Tommy, Brian Hooker, so many people whose children were injured and died, I really think it had an impact on him, and I really think it made him say things and go in a direction. I don't even think Senator Blumenthal was anticipating that he was going to go in that direction and do it. So that's kind of the buzz around here, outside of the Senate hearing right now, is, whoa, did that just happen? Did a high-ranking Democrat just come on our side? So I don't know that he quite did that. He made sure to say, like, no promises, right? I didn't promise it. I'm a lawyer. I didn't promise anything. But still, nevertheless, for all the years that people have been battling for this, to move the needle like that, to have a coming together of the minds across the aisle, that's really the highlight moment that I think is really blowing everybody away. And the other thing for me is just seeing these amazing people. I see Polly Tommy through screens every single day. To be in person, it's a touch and to hug. Mary Holland, Giorgio, John Gilmore, Rita Palma, just, I mean, on and on and on. So many amazing people that came here. It's just always great to get together with real medical freedom fighters. And man, what a day it is. Polly Tommy
It's a big day.
Testimony to the Senate today. I mean, listen, everything ain't perfect and we still have a lot of battles, but Polly Tommy and Brian Hooker gave testimony to the Senate today. It's just amazing. We fought so hard for this in so many different ways, and so, it's not done. It's not done, but remarkable moment. Michael Kane, CHD TV. Polly Tommy, you just gave unbelievable testimony to a Senate hearing with Senator Ron Johnson, Voices of the Vaccine Injured. Give me your immediate reaction. How do you think it went?
Better than I thought it was going to be. I mean, it was difficult. You're sitting there and you're listening to that Blumenthal going off on everything that I know not to be true. I mean, that's the fact with what we do. So it's really hard to sit there and just be, I kept thinking, sit there, be good, be calm. You work for Children's Health Defense. You can't go off on one. And then when it came to my time, I had like the sheet and I had to read it. I knew that I had to stick to the script, and I couldn't. I am so tired of seeing those measles death placards coming out. These 2 girls that died of measles, when we know they didn't. It had to be addressed. I'm sick of hearing about polio, when we know the only polio stories are done are those that got the vaccines. I am sick of hearing all these stories over and over again. But yes, the person to my left's son died of of H1N1 or whatever it's called. That's tragic. And we know that. Any child's death is tragic. So, but I do think something's shifted a bit in there.
Oh, I think so. I think there definitely was a shift. You know, there was a remarkable moment where a mother whose child died of a vaccine and a mother whose child died of flu, they hugged each other. You know, it just choked me up. I mean, there was anybody who saw it was crying when it happened. And I think it was a remarkable moment of just sharing in sympathy, right? And sharing in this pain, even if it came from different places.
Right.
I mean, what do you think about that?
No, I think right. And but that's what we're about, as we've talked about before. We're not here to fight people, are we? We're here to literally warn people and try and put a stop to this consistent death. There's so much death. Death to my left, death to my right, death everywhere. So we have to collectively come to our movement are never going to trust the vaccine again. I don't care how green or how safe anybody, Bobby or anybody tells us it is. We're never going there again because we've had catastrophic disasters from it. But we have to come to something where those pro-vaccine people really, really, really need to know these vaccines are on. I mean, I feel sorry for Blumenthal in a way. I mean, it's like he's reading a Pfizer, Moderna thing. I mean, he knows not what he says.
Well, and still Blumenthal seemed to wake up when Dr. Brian Hooker brought up William Thompson destroying documents that were related to the MMR's
and
relationship.
He's right. None of us agreed that should happen. So it was extraordinary in there.
It was funny that Senator Blumenthal said this needs to be investigated. Needs to be.
Yeah.
Like, where have you been for over a decade?
Great that he's coming back.
Yes,
and don't forget,
correct.
Senator Johnson was saying, if you've got a vaccine injury story or something, send it to the office or through Children's Health Defense. We'll send it on to. That's big. Because they want to start collecting in all these stories. That's big.
Yes, I agree with you on that. Almost 3 decades, Polly, you've been doing this, right? You the first magazine dedicated to autism, right? When this tragedy struck your family. Multiple Vax buses, movie, CHD TV. What do you have to say to the vaccine injured, to parents of vaccine injured children in this historic moment that Children's Health Defense here in Congress? I mean, what are your thoughts? What do you have to say to people?
Oh, it was a proud moment to be speaking on behalf of those people that have come to the bus from around the world for so long. I had so many messages of people saying, thank you for standing up for my son, for my child, for my dead baby. Because once they're injured or once they're dead, no one ever speaks to them again. So yeah, they deserve justice. And just for a second, just there in that Senate, we had the names of these injured and killed. Billy's name was mentioned in there, and that's justice to a degree for us. And we're going, in the end of the day, the truth will come out. We're just a tiny bit closer to it, and we're going to keep fighting on. How many times do you think I mentioned Children's Health Defense in there? I'll get that name in. On!
Polly, Tommy, you're just a legend. You're just amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I love you, Michael.
Love you.
We're a good team.
God. Hey, Michael Kane, CHD TV, Mary Holland, the CEO of Children's Health Defense. We're just coming out of Ron Johnson's Senate hearing, Voices of the Vaccine Injured. It was remarkable what we saw happen. Give me your reaction. You were there for the whole hearing.
Yeah, I was. And I was here for the first hearing that he had earlier this year on COVID and the injuries from COVID shots. It was really exciting. I want to start with the fact that 6 senators didn't even show up. There were 6 empty chairs. The only person who was there for the whole hearing was Senator Ron Johnson. The ranking member, Ralph Blumenthal, was there for the vast majority of it, to his credit, and he participated, and we'll come back to that. And then there was Senator Moreno from Ohio. Josh Hawley showed up. Senator Hassan showed up. They didn't even stay more than 10 minutes. So we're really talking about Ron Johnson, right, who is awesome and who really drove this hearing and who really opened up a space that we haven't seen in 20 years. And that is that there was a little bit of bipartisan colloquy about the problems, right? That we have different views about vaccines and about vaccine preventable diseases, so-called, but what the opening was that we have not seen in 20 years was a conversation about direct-to-consumer advertising of medications and prescription drugs, where they said that they would work on a bill together. There was information about the problems with the vaccine injury compensation program, and most remarkably, there was a productive conversation about the hazards of giving liability protection to any industry, and for them to have a common thought about the hazards of an industry that is incentivized by having no accountability, that was incredible. And also Senator Moreno spoke to that. Senator Moreno was totally focused on what just happened during COVID. We've got to deal with that. But the two, most senior people on that committee, they came to a meeting of the minds that I don't think either one of them anticipated. And that was really hopeful. That was really exciting.
It really seemed to strike a chord with Senator Blumenthal, the ranking Democrat on the committee, when Dr. Brian Hooker had referenced the destruction of documents
by the
CDC.
Exactly
and this was a moment where Blumenthal was like, wait, destruction of documents.
Right. I was an attorney general of Connecticut. Like, that's not cool.
Right.
And it was so interesting because I think what touched something in him was he was like, I led the charge on big tobacco. Yes. I led the charge against Purdue Pharmaceutical in Connecticut. I am not a, prostitute for big pharma, is basically what he was telling us. And yet he was still using the canards, safe and effective, But there was a little bit of an opening there that we really haven't seen.
I agree with you 100%. This is decades of work for this moment. We don't know where it's going to go yet, but speak to that just a little bit. Speak to the vaccine injured, the parents like yourself who have gone through this, what this moment is, where we've come to.
Well, like Brian Hooker, I've been coming to Washington countless times, sharing rooms with people, driving people down, coming down in John Gilmore's car that broke down. I mean, I have a million memories of coming to D.C. Yeah. And I was saying to other people, I think it was back like 2013. So I'm with Rolf Hazelhurst, with Mark Blaxell, with Jen Larson. We do a briefing because we've gotten Daryl Issa in the House of Representatives. He's head of the Oversight and Government Reform Committee. He's like, we're going to do a hearing about the vaccine injury. I'm with you guys. He came to Autism One. He was revved up. And so we thought, great, we want to energize the staffers from all of these offices to come to our hearing. So we naively, stupidly, do a briefing in the House. And pharma, now Vaccinate Your Family, then Immunization Act, they got wind of this briefing and they were like, we're shutting it down. And they got to ISA and they got to every member of the committee and the hearing didn't happen. Wow. And that was over 10 years ago. And there has been nothing since then. And before that, by about 10 years, at the beginning of the 2000s, were Dan Burton's hearings, which were amazing. And he was, again, Oversight and Government Reform in the House. In the Senate, there has not been anything in over 20 years. So as minuscule as this opening is in some ways, it's enormous in the context of the last 20 years. And it wouldn't have happened but for COVID. And it was so interesting. Senator Moreno of Ohio was basically saying, I came to DC because what happened over the last 5 years is inexcusable. There's no accountability. And we're going to, we're going to deal with this situation. So it was, I'm somewhat hopeful. I don't want to be overly hopeful because, it's been decades in the making and here we are still, and a lot more injuries, a lot more deaths, a lot more shots. But there was a little bit of a glimmer there that we haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah. Mary Holland, thank you so much for all
you.
that you do. Legendary Rita Palma, My Kids, My Choice, from Long Island, New York, for 20 years dealing with religious exemptions for kids to have the right to attend school. You just came out of this amazing Senate hearing. Ron Johnson, Voices of the Vaccine Injured. Give me your reaction to it.
Okay. I'm still trying to recover from the shock of Blumenthal from Connecticut saying that he, as a lawyer, he's offended by the fact that the vaccine manufacturers can't get sued. So let's recover that. If that's literally, that is an amazing thing that just came out of there. Even though he's wrong about the gun manufacturers, the vaccine manufacturers actually have better protections. But that's a small detail that we can certainly correct with him at a certain point. But to hear him say that and to hear him talk about, he talked about DTCA, right? The commercials on TV?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so 2 big hits. And of course, we've been talking about this forever, but to have a senator from Connecticut of all states.
Democrat.
So it was just a collective jaw drop in there that I couldn't believe. Anyway, so that, and of course, Ron Johnson, the work that he's doing is just extraordinary. And ran up and got a picture, and we're going to meet with his office tomorrow. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
You're always lobbying, always working, you're always doing the work.
Yeah.
So just one last thing. If you had the opportunity to say thank you to Children's Health Defense for the work that they've done over the years, defending the vaccine injured, fighting for the vaccine injured, what would you say to say thank you to CHD?
Gosh, what would I do to say? You know what? Any opportunity you have to give to CHD, whether it be your time or your money or your prayers, like just do it. They are the premier organization that's just devoted to one mission, you know, morally, conscientiously, in every other way. I mean, they are it. They are the first stop, the last stop, and everything in between. What would we do literally without CHD? So thank you. God bless them.
What's your name and what brought you here?
My name is Patty Price. I came down to support the effort to expose this problem we have with the safety of the vaccines and to support the people from Children's Health who are going to be testifying.
Yeah,
Brian and Polly and all of the others. And this is long overdue. So glad Senator Johnson is shining a light on this. And it's obvious to anyone who's not funded by pharma that we have a problem with chronic health in this country. I'm a practitioner in Baltimore. I help people figure out what's wrong with them. And many of them are injured by the COVID vaccine. And I'm helping them detox that right now. So I'm really keenly interested in this. And I think this was an incredible hearing. I did not have such expectations, but something happened during that hearing. It was the testimony was so moving, and they really had all of the facts and figures that I saw Senator Blumenthal sort of offer to help put some focus on the injury process for these vaccine victims. And up until now, I have seen no humanity coming out of him about this at either this hearing or the myocarditis hearing. And it's really important that these people get help and that we have all of these vaccines saline placebo tested, because nobody wants to give their kids something that was never tested more than a day or two or tested with another vaccine. It's outrageous.
Yeah, absolutely. Just one, that was excellent. Thank you. Sure. One other question. If you had the opportunity to say thank you to Children's Health Defense for what they've done to protect and defend and speak up for the vaccine injured, what would you say to say thank you to CHD?
Oh, well, of course, the work. Mary Holland's an amazing fighter. I mean, I see her at these events. I get your emails. The writing's great. I know through my friend Karen how hard she's working, and I think it just shows the kind of team that you guys have put together that transcends politics, because this is about the kids. And that really gave me hope with RFK, that he knows how to get people together from both sides, and just praying that, you know, we can help save the next generation of kids from this.
All right. We're here with Kate Corrigan, a legendary medical freedom warrior from New York, my home state. It's great to have you here. You just came out of the Senate hearing, Voices of the Vaccine Injured. If you were able to thank CHD for defending the vaccine injured and being a voice for the vaccine injured, what would you say to thank Children's Health Defense?
I would just say that they've done a tremendous job as far as amplifying the voices of the silenced, and they've been doing that continuously for countless years. And finally, thank God, you know, we have a majority in the Senate. We have an amazing Senator Ron Johnson, who, you know, gave us this platform to be able to give a voice to the voiceless, give a voice to people who have been reprimanded and harmed and injured, and their families have been destroyed by the vaccine industry. And it's just amazing the work that CHD has been doing, and they are the real champion and leader within the medical freedom movement, and just so grateful for all the work that they've done to put this amazing event together.
Excellent. You sat through the whole hearing, you saw it. Pretty wild, some great stuff, some amazing stuff, some unexpected stuff. What's your comments? What's your reaction just coming out of the hearing? You
know, I feel really moved, really empowered, really excited just about the time that we're living in right now. I think that now we're going to see massive change, and it's a time coming. You know, the past few years, I joined the medical freedom movement in 2021. It was extremely difficult, very discouraging to say the least. We fought really hard in New York. New York's my home state. As as you know, Michael, it was a really difficult time, but now I really feel excited about the future, about what the future holds, about, the work CHD is doing, and the fact that we have a president in the White House who is willing to hear us, willing to work alongside Bobby Kennedy as Secretary of HHS. It's very exciting a time to be alive right now.
Excellent.
So.
Kate Corrigan, thank you so much. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thanks,
Excellent.
Michael.
11 and a half. My middle son is 8 and my baby is 6.
Did you have a conversation about vaccines?
No, because I'm a pediatric nurse, and so my training basically just steered me toward vaccine or die.
I mean, yeah, you'll get the most training.
Yes.
Because you must have given vaccines.
Yes, I did.
So what did you used to think of people that would come and say, I don't want to, or question the shots?
I thought they were putting their children at great harm, at great risk. I genuinely thought that. And so I didn't think twice about vaccinating my first son. And he received all of his vaccines on schedule. And we started noticing that something was wrong when he was about 2. His milestone, he was always a little bit lagging on his developmental milestones, but also as a pediatric nurse, I didn't worry about too much about that because it happens, and he was the first baby, and he was still a happy, content, just a good baby. He was just a really good baby. And every now and again, somebody would bring up autism, and I thought that was insane. He wasn't autistic. There was nothing grave like that with him. And then we got him started in a developmental preschool in upstate New York. He was about 2.5, and actually a little bit beyond 2.5. And the director there, she had been around a really long time, and she just kind of laid down the law, and she wanted to bring in a developmentalist to do an assessment on Griffin, and he did. And at the time, he even felt like Griffin was intellectually disabled. I really took it as a challenge, so I sought out a developmental psychologist to get my own evaluation done. And at that point, I had my middle son, and he was just an infant. He was 3 months. And on December 17th of that year, 8 years ago, the developmental psychologist, confirmed that yes, it was autism. But I continued to vaccinate my middle son because I hadn't yet gone down the vaccine rabbit hole, so to speak, and I wasn't willing to believe that could be it. And then something just gave me pause. And I thought, I don't have to do it. It was the first time I never realized I didn't have to give my children vaccines when people were telling me I had to. I had never thought that before. It had never occurred to me that I could just wait. And so with my middle son, I thought, I'm just gonna wait. And he got his last pediatric vaccines at 9 months. Time went on, and it became more and more apparent that my eldest, Griffin, was not only autistic but intellectually disabled, like really affected. Mm-hmm. Rowan is definitely, thank you. Rowan definitely has challenges, but can talk.
Second,
My 11-year-old can't even read. So when I got pregnant with my third, my husband and I both agreed we're just not going to vaccinate. There just wasn't a good reason to. And he's now 6, and you can see in him, you can see a little bit of the quirk that especially my middle son has. He gets excited, he gets a little bit flappy, or things get loud and he doesn't like the loud. But he's a typical 6-year-old. He runs around and he makes friends like it's nothing. He can read. He reads beautifully. He can have this great conversation with you, and you're like, yeah, that's a conversation with a 6-year-old talking about going into outer space, or animals he sees, or the latest insect that he finds interesting. And my husband and I, it wasn't actually that long ago, probably like about a year ago, we both looked at each other after knowing Aiden, our youngest, for 5 years by that point. And we realized that if we had vaccinated him, he'd have problems too. I mean, it became clear to us. So it's like we gave birth to this little experiment. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just so obvious when you look at it that I followed that stupid pediatric schedule to the T. And I'm gonna pay for it for the rest of his life. And my middle one, I stopped at 9 months, and yeah, he'll have little challenges, but we can overcome them. And the third one, I wouldn't let anyone touch him with a needle. But you can see, and it just, and I realized if I had just given Griffin a chance, if I had just waited, if I had just given him an opportunity to grow up. I never even held my baby unvaccinated. They shot him before they put him in my arms, and I'll never know what he could be like without it, because I can't take him away. And I get to grieve, because I have 3 boys who need me. It's not like they're dead. They're in my house. They need me to be there for them. I don't get to do this on a daily basis. I don't get to unload and get it off my chest. My husband was driving by, we were just running errands, and he saw this bus and he made this crazy U-turn. I'm like, what are you doing?
So you just saw this bus from the road?
Yeah. And he was like, we need to see what they're doing. We knew about this project. We knew about RFK Jr. and the Children's Health Defense, and I didn't think I was going to give an interview like this, but my husband just really wanted me to do it.
I'm so glad you did. It's so important, because you've been to sea for so long. They trained you as a pediatric nurse that vaccines were.
I can remember I was working on my master's. I was working on my master's at the University of Pennsylvania, which is the most elite nursing institution in the world. And the stuff they told us about vaccines in that class, first of all, it was only half a day to talk about vaccines, to go over vaccine science. And physicians don't get it any better. They don't spend any more time. They don't have there's not a full class on vaccinology or any of these things. Not that it's mandatory or anything like that. It's glossed over.
What would they say? Give me some examples.
the big one, and this was the one that kind of gave me pause. Griffin was already going on 2 years old when I took this class. I think he was about 2. The big one that I found so shocking was the instructor. I don't want to say her name. She goes, these vaccine detractors talk about how people are making so much money on vaccines. Vaccines don't make people any money. And I was like, I'm not quite sure what this has to do with taking care of kids. Like why this is even a point in this lecture. But it stuck. It kind of like stuck with me, and it wasn't that long. I don't remember. It couldn't have been long after this lecture. It might have been the clinical I had while I was in this class where this lecture took place. But I was doing a primary care pediatric rotation. I was training to be a primary care pediatric nurse practitioner, and so I was at a clinic in Wilmington, Delaware, and it was a very big deal. They made it a very big deal that us trainees, us new people coming in, understood that there was one refrigerator for vaccines for children with insurance and a wholly separate refrigerator for vaccines in a whole different part of the clinic for the vaccines for children who did not have insurance. So the CHIP kids, the kids on Medicaid. And I didn't understand at the time, and nobody could explain, not that I was willing to really ask questions, but I look back on that, especially, taking the time to learn a little bit more about this stuff. And it just makes me sick. Like, why? What did it mean? What did it mean if it wasn't about the money? But the professor in my class said it has nothing to do with the money, that, people like to claim that this is somehow a money-making scheme, money-making operation. I'm like, well, then what is it if it's not money? That you have to have them in two totally separate refrigerators because, God forbid, an uninsured child gets one of the vaccines from the insured fridge. And what are those vaccines in the CHIP fridge? What did we call it? What was it called? I can't remember. Vaccine. It had a name. That's too strange. That's too bizarre. Why would you segregate like that? What's the point? I don't understand.
It's dark.
So the average person isn't aware of it, and I wasn't the average person. I was a nurse. I'd gone to
nurse.
I was a pediatric nurse. And there's strange games being played with all of these things that nobody's talking about. Who knows what they are? Who knows what the games are? But unsuspecting mothers are being told, you're putting your kid at risk unless you do these things. And I look at my 3 boys and I screwed up. I didn't take time to learn the things I should have learned, but I don't know where I would have learned them. I don't know. I mean, the biggest problem is you just can't take it back. Once you do it, you can't take it back.
I'm afraid that is the biggest problem, yeah. This is why we're trying to warn people, because it's painful. The whole thing's painful.
And yeah, I mean, yeah, warning people. You don't have to do this. Get to know your baby. Get to know your child, especially your first. Like, you don't know what could innately be going on with your kiddo. I mean, I look at my youngest and I can see that slight hint of quirkiness. So, that vaccines then trigger and cause this cascade of problems.
It's also the fear and everything else. Would you ever go back to being a pediatric nurse?
Well, after COVID, I don't want to go back to nursing, period. Mm-hmm. There's just been too much deception. And I watched it with other nurses. Just, they got fed these stories and they were made to just fall in line, and you couldn't question anything. I couldn't believe the whole mask nonsense, not to go on to a different point, but I mean, I remember talking about this in nursing school, how, in the surgical suite, we wear masks to keep our spittle out of an open wound and to keep the, bodily fluids out of an open wound from splashing in our faces, because you have to talk, you have to communicate with your team. That's all the mask was for. But now all of a sudden it's science that it's going to prevent infectious disease. And it's like, and I watched former colleagues of mine, they were willing to die on that hill. Like, not want to be friends with people, not want to associate with people anymore who were like, this is dumb. This is not correct. It's not correct. Because we sat in the same lecture hall, had the same silly debate over it. But now all of a sudden, because your job's on the line, I guess, I don't know. It just, American healthcare is no longer about taking care of people. It's no longer about doing the right thing. It's no longer about doing what's best for the patient. The patient never benefits. Somebody else benefits. Everywhere you turn, it's becoming clearer and clearer. It's not about taking care of people. It's not about wellness. It's not about health. It's about somebody's bottom line.
The truth is, vaccine injuries are real and they've been ignored.
These childhood vaccinations, the people of America are telling us they are not safe and effective. We are seriously concerned at Children's Health Defense about the disinformation and misinformation out there.
Society does not want to acknowledge vaccine injury, period. My son's life has been ruined physically and emotionally, and he is persecuted for the mere fact that he exists.
After 8 years of litigation, HHS conceded by preponderance of the evidence that Chris died from her HPV vaccinations.
Parents deserve the truth. We deserve real, informed consent, because no parent should have to live the nightmare I do.
I am heartbroken to hear these stories, and it makes me want to do something.
How about we ban pharmaceutical ads on TV?
I've advocated it, and you have a co-sponsor.
The government has decided that this particular industry doesn't have to be liable to anybody.
I am extremely suspicious, as a lawyer, of immunity that is granted in any blanket way across the board to any manufacturer or to anyone.
So if we're going to do something, the North Star has got to be medical freedom. I get to decide what's good for me and my family with proper information. And if I'm given improper information, just like in any other industry, there's got to be accountability.
No more Pfizer-sponsored science. We need independent science.
I am competing against a pharmaceutical lobby of 1,600 lobbyists. That's 3 lobbyists for each member of Congress. This is insane.
Everybody sitting here, bar 2, vaccinated their families with catastrophic results. Over 12,000 signatures on those 2 buses of death, death, death. When will enough be enough? How many more buses? So this has to stop. And we implore you, please, to follow us at Children's Health Defense, at least break down the truth and get to the truth behind the science of what is really happening.